Welcome to the Goal Podcast, news and commentary from Gun Owners Action League, your leading voice for the Massachusetts gun owner.
I'm Jeff, across the table from Garrett.
What's up, man?
Hanging in there, like riding the struggle bus this week. When you start getting that feel, that achy, little congested, something's coming.
Something's coming.
But I'm going to hang in there and I'm going to do my best.
You're going to vitamin C up. So tonight we have some interesting stuff to go over. Jim's going to join us in a few minutes. Jim Wallace, Executive Director, Gun Owners Action League, is going to join us to talk about some updates as well as the new stuff for like restrictions and things like that with the
registration
requirements. Exactly. Yep. So we'll get to him in just a few minutes. So we did have a piece of news from the federal courts. Department of Justice argued in this case against the assault weapons ban on level of federal court.
I know, it's like the first time that the government's actually arguing for civil rights this way.
That's weird.
Or at least in the context of the Second Amendment. But yeah, Tuesday, September 22nd, the Department of Justice Assistant AG for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon, was scheduled and did participate in oral arguments in the case of Barnett v. Raoul. So that's the challenge to Illinois' version of kind of a post-Bruin temper tantrum that they call the Protect Illinois Communities Act, or PICA.
Always with the euphemisms. Protect Illinois.
But that law was an updated, assault-style firearms ban. It lumped in, rifles and magazines and a whole grab bag of, restrictions that gun control advocates love to daydream about. So for the last 2 years, this case has been kind of bouncing back and forth. The federal district court in Illinois first put the law on hold, saying it likely violated the Second Amendment. Then the Seventh Circuit reversed the federal district court. So it went back down to federal district court, and the court again ruled the ban unconstitutional, and now it's back up to the Seventh Circuit after the Supreme Court declined to take it at this so-called early stage of litigation.
Like they do. But.
So the Department of Justice had even jumped in and filed an unopposed motion to directly participate in oral arguments, getting 5 minutes of time that was ceded by the plaintiff's attorneys.
Now, things start to get interesting here. Harmeet Dillon stood up, told the court straight out that the test this circuit used in the earlier Bevis decision was wrong. Now, as a quick refresher, in Bevis, the Seventh Circuit upheld Illinois' ban at the preliminary injunction stage, leaning on the idea that AR-15s are too, quote, militaristic to be protected. Dillon said that that's not how the Supreme Court has ever framed the Second Amendment. In fact, she argued, the Supreme Court has been clear since Heller and Bruin that the right belongs to the people and covers arms that are commonly owned by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes, especially purposes such as self-defense. Dillon also pushed back on the whole, quote, military-style label. She pointed out that millions of Americans legally own AR-15s, and under the Supreme Court's framework, that alone means that they're protected arms. The Second Amendment doesn't hinge on whether something looks scary or, shares some features with, something that the military might use. It hinges on whether ordinary people own it and use it for lawful purposes.
Yeah, the state tried to argue that, since AR-15s are not used as commonly in self-defense as handguns, that they're somehow then not protected. However, they also admitted, and this is the state of Illinois admitting, that, those numbers are, obviously informed by the fact that you're not allowed to carry an AR-15 outside of your home.
In many jurisdictions, yeah, that's true.
So,
absolutely.
Of course, the numbers are going to be skewed. But she also... So the real fight is whether the Seventh Circuit sticks with the Bevis framework, which intentionally waters down Bruin, or whether it follows the Supreme Court's clear instructions. Dillon made the case that the Second Amendment cannot be treated like a second-class right. Of course, in its final moments rebutting the plaintiffs, the state of Illinois argued that for the Seventh Circuit to grant relief and strike down the law, the court would have to admit it was wrong in a prior decision. That was their closing. So
It's like, oh no, we're going to have to eat crow, so we can't possibly.
One of the most disgustingly underhanded arguments I've heard in a long time to say that judges should uphold a constitutional law as a matter of saving face. It's nothing short of just shameless, slimy manipulation, appealing to their ego.
So what happens next? If the Seventh Circuit sides with the state and keeps PICA in place, this case is almost guaranteed to head right back up to the Supreme Court. And at that point, the justices will have to decide, whether they meant what they said in Bruin about courts following history and tradition, or whether lower courts can invent new tests that give legislatures a pass. If, on the other hand, the plaintiffs win here, Illinois' law falls and it sets up a major precedent that could ripple into similar bans in other states. Either way, keep an eye on this case. It's worth watching closely because it's shaping up to be a test on whether or not Bruin has any teeth and if the Supreme Court's serious about what they said.
Hey, with the federal DOJ involved, kind of puts it more squarely in Supreme Court's face.
It doesn't have any precedent or legal bearing on whether or not they'll accept it because they have their own discretion as far as that goes. But I would think that maybe that lends it a little bit of weight. You would think the Supreme Court would want to take up a case where they made a decision and then a small handful of states decided to give the double middle finger back to the Supreme Court and say, we're not going to do what you tell us to do. Yeah, exactly.
Which I think, ironically, the last time that happened had to do with another set of civil rights. But, neither here nor there.
Yeah. All right, joining us this evening, Jim Wallace, Executive Director, Gun Owners Action League. The boss, how's it going?
I was never there. I swear, I was never there.
It's far too late to try for an alibi now.
I know, right? I tried to put in for the helicopter in the office in Jackman, Maine, but you guys didn't approve it at the last board meeting. So,
just considering
yet. Considering all these meatheads out there that are saying we're not doing anything, we're just taking the money and not doing anything. If they could see the legal bills that we're paying to try to fight this stuff, they might fall off their rocking chair.
And rather than, it's good rather than like engaging and getting in a basically a pissing contest with him, you just send him the link to all the cases that work. It's right on the website.
Here it is.
Yeah, not a secret. Gold.org.
Yeah, right. Just go there and, you'll see what's going on.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's called a thing.
What is going on, Jim? What's new?
Well, what's going on is basically what has been going on since this garbage was passed into law, and that is a million questions and almost no answers from the state. So we are trying to do our best to get people answers. And I know we've said this before, but it's worth saying again. The stuff we put out, people occasionally will say, you're just extremists trying to raise money.
Yeah.
No, we're conscientious and we're trying to keep you out of prison. So when we put stuff out, it's going to be the worst case scenario because, if you go to the governor, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, the Secretary of Public Safety, FCAB, the Attorney General, I'm really searching to find a friendly face that won't screw you in the hardest possible way it could happen. So we're constantly telling people, listen, this is the way it could be interpreted. Because if I can read it that way, they can read it that way. And it's incredibly difficult to give solid answers in this. Guys, I'll tell you, it wasn't this meeting, but the one before at FCAB, when I was getting frustrated with the lack of answers from Executive Office of Public Safety. I was told by several members of the board that they're just going to have to wait until this goes to court.
What? So somebody has to get arrested and land in jail for them to figure this crap out.
Yeah, that's pretty much where they're going.
Jesus.
That's just proof positive.
Unconscionable.
It's proof positive that the whole idea is a chilling effect.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
They want you afraid and they want you to worry about, what could possibly happen. So you just don't do the thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the half joke meme that I sent you guys a while back that, more healer. You show me the gun owner, I'll show you the crime. And that's essentially what they're doing, because the bad guys, they're letting out on bail and everything else. I mean, poor Kyle is still rotting in Worcester County Jail. And literally, they just gave a bail. This guy did a home invasion, burnt the owner of the house on purpose, and was out on bail. While out on bail, was caught with a gun, got out on bail again.
Jeez.
So it's so obvious that they're coming after us, the good guys, and just letting the criminals run amok. It can't be any more obvious than it is right now.
It's evident.
But we will continue to persevere. So the biggest thing that's coming up, and we put out a bunch of alerts and videos, is the registration and serialization mandates.
Yeah.
We were told at the last FCAB meeting that these new systems, which, by the way, they developed without talking to any stakeholders, none of the people that would use this system, and they just hired this company and said, oh, here, do this. It is supposed to launch October of 2025. So we can figure that the bugs will be worked out October 26 or something, maybe 30. We don't know. But, it's a government system.
2054,
Yeah. And there are inherent problems in the system that they did not fix. For instance, the big one that they should have fixed in the new system is if, say, Garrett legally sells a gun to, well, not Jeff, because he ran away, but to me, and so it goes on my list of guns that I own, but it does not come off of Garrett's list of guns that he owns. Now it's going to be exacerbated because retailers have to register their inventory.
Jesus.
So all of the guns on their system that are in their name, as they sell them, are going to continue to be in their name. So
that's ridiculous.
Literally within a few years, it could look like there's 100 million guns in the state of Massachusetts because the same person, got rid of it, sold it to a friend. I mean, you look at the shotgun that we're raffling off. Beautiful, shotgun. And the gold member bought it, tried it, didn't like it. It wasn't what he wanted, so he donated it to gold. So now it's in his name, and now it's in Gold's name, and now it's going to be in the winner's name, and it just goes on and on and on. So it's
and this is somehow supposed to help with tracing and so forth.
Well, you can just see the antis misusing the system, right? They'll call it a crime gun or a community gun because it's in the name of whatever, 3, 4, 5, 10 people. And it's just going to be a nightmare. But they don't care because they didn't bother to talk to us. So I wonder what they paid for this system. That should be interesting to find out.
Well, that audit should figure it out, right?
Right, the audit.
Well, remember that audit was just for the legislature. It's not for the executive offices.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't want to audit the executive offices because, oh my word,
and all kinds of good stuff.
$64 billion budget this year, and since they passed the budget, I can tell you how many other bills they've passed spending money.
Yeah,
so it's like I saw Maura Healey today. She wants $400 million to encourage industry to come into Massachusetts. Well, I can actually save us that $400 million and just ask her to leave. That might help.
That'd go a long ways.
Yeah, you and your whole staff and your lieutenant governor, just go away.
Just go.
And then we can start talking to people who want to invest money in Massachusetts. New York is facing the same thing. There are no businesses that want to come into New York. I mean, good luck. But
certainly not now.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
I mean, even small business, a lot of people know Holly and I have a little side business, a spice company. We have to pay $500 a year to the state just to keep our name registered. And as a matter of fact, I have a piece of paper right here next to me that it says it hasn't been paid, and my corporation will expire if I don't get the money into the state.
Lovely.
So I guess all the spices in the back room will just instantly vanish. And
cease to exist.
I don't know.
Bootleg spices.
Bootleg spices.
Like, it's going to be a spice contact. Oh,
that's why I need an address in Maine to start this stuff up again. So that's all right. So anyway.
So Maura passed the law in the emergency preamble around a year ago. The stuff, all the provisions and so forth went into effect around a year ago. There hasn't been any guidance, quote unquote, guidance updates in a while, right? They said they weren't going to do that anymore. They
didn't say anything, but the last guidance was in November.
Yeah.
So and it's just my personal opinion, my uneducated opinion, that they stopped because every time they had to put out a guidance, they realized they were weakening the law. And even if they weren't weakening the law, they were relieving a little tiny bit of stress from the Second Amendment community, and they don't want to do that. So,
can't have that.
No. So I don't think we'll see any more guidance. Now, they're supposed to send out a letter or notify every single gun owner in the Commonwealth about the registration and serialization laws 6 months before it takes place. Good luck with that. Wow. I just see that going out on email, and it's just going to be thrown into spam, and nobody will ever get what they're supposed to get. So the statute,
as garbage as it is, it has some dates associated, right? Or does it? As far as you have a year or something to. So talk about that a little bit.
Once the system is in place, according to the law, you will have a year to comply. Now, the question is, and I have asked EOPS, does that apply to the retailers? Can they wait a year before they have to start registering their inventory? Or is that something, they have to do right away? Because the law says, we and they have to do it within 7 days of receiving it. But retailers throughout the law are treated much different from, schleps like us three.
Yeah.
And, even worse because Jeff doesn't live here. So he's one of those
all caught up in this too. There's some real sticky areas for,
non-residents.
What side of what lines you live on and how this all plays out.
Yeah.
Well, we are the great unwashed, but the non-residents are the zombie apocalypse trying to approach the Commonwealth.
Yeah, right.
And it's going to be scary because, eventually, a hunting season will roll around. And if you report, hey, I took a deer with this muzzleloader, I wouldn't be surprised if you got an email that says, what muzzleloader?
Yeah, you didn't register.
You don't have a registered muzzleloader in the state of Massachusetts. So what gun are we talking about?
Well, that's a circular argument that I have at FCAB when I mention that, non-residents are supposed to register their guns before they come. And I'm told, no, they don't have to. And I said, the law says possess in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
It is pretty darn clear. Now, the problem is if you don't have a license to carry with temporary license as a non-resident, you can't get into the system to register anything.
Right.
And we continue to advise people, do not come into Massachusetts for any reason with a gun without that license now. And people are like, you're going to really? Well, talk to all the people that are facing serious time. I mean, Kyle's one, but that's an interesting circumstance. But talk to the attorneys that we work with on a daily basis almost. They are defending non-residents who are simply driving through the state and are getting pulled over for one reason or another, and their lives are destroyed. So I still, John Green was the first to call for this, and I back him up 100%. Do not come into this state unless you are truly traveling through the state.
Yeah,
and make sure everything is locked up. But even the large capacity magazine stuff, the magazine itself has to be unloaded and locked in a container. And if you're carrying a gun that matches that magazine, you're screwed. It's just untenable for anybody coming into or through Massachusetts to follow the law. So, as far as I'm concerned, they have to register when they come. Of course, the system is not in place, so it won't be enforced.
Of course.
However, come October, you have a year to comply. but do non-residents have a year to comply?
Yeah, who knows?
Because they're coming in, and we have no idea. So it's crazy. The biggest questions we get is what guns have to be registered and what guns have to be serialized.
Yeah.
We did redo the page, and hopefully the Q&As and the bullet points help. I know it's overwhelming, and we're actually talking today. John Pajak, one of our board members, who's worked with gun laws since you and I were probably in Pampers, but
since gunpowder was invented, yeah.
That's right, yeah. He actually suggested putting together like a checklist on the website. If your gun meets any of these, if you check off any of these boxes, you have to register or serialize. So might not be a bad idea. We'll look at that in the next week or so as we get more information. The muzzleloaders are, as a matter of fact, he and I debated that today over the phone. Muzzleloaders are an interesting one because, again, the circular discussion on this goes to when they removed the exemption for muzzleloader ammunition components. They removed the exemption. And in my reading of the law, that now means you have to have a license to have it. And others have said, no, it's a muzzleloader. It doesn't meet the definition. I said, well, hold on now.
Ammunition
hold
components.
on.
Yeah.
Well, not just ammunition components. If you look at the definition of a firearm, the modern muzzleloaders meet the definition of a firearm. And they take muzzle-loading ammunition components. Therefore, those components work in a modern firearm. And, you get it's not a cartridge. It doesn't say that, folks.
Yeah.
Again, we are reading things to the extent of trying to keep you out of prison. So, arguing back at me is not going to help when you're in court facing how many years in prison. So because some of those muzzleloaders meet not only federal but state laws that they're a modern firearm, they have to be registered. So trying to pick apart what has to be and what doesn't have to be. Now, the only obvious thing is if it's an antique firearm or replica of, and the definitions are pretty clear on that.
Yeah.
Right. And, cannot take any components that are modern, but now they're all modern. So I don't know how that actually works. A muzzleloader with a frame or receiver. Initially, when we read this law, there was always two categories of muzzleloaders, the antiques and then the modern ones.
Yeah.
And we almost thought there was a third somewhere buried deep in that garbage. And we still have it listed on the website as having a third category because you never know what's going to rear its ugly head. So it's going to be difficult for people to understand. One of the hurdles that people are trying to figure out is there is no serialization requirement, again, for antiques or replicas, but also for any pre-68 guns, because a lot of manufacturers did not use serial numbers pre-68.
Sure.
Yeah. However, you still have to register them. And people are saying, well, how do you register a gun without a serial number? I mean, believe it or not, that's already the case. So it shouldn't be any different in a new system. You're just going to either leave it blank or, they'll have a check off like doesn't apply or something like that.
Whatever,
Yeah. So you can just imagine a law enforcement officer in a situation going, how do I know this is registered to you? Well, I have a lever action 30-30 Winchester from, 1910, and it says right there on my list. Yeah, but how do I know this one is yours? So
it's not serialized. So yeah,
that's right. So I'm not going to give him any ideas, but you can see. I just see the judges, especially on the district level, going, just get out of my courtroom. I am done with this
Well, you hope
stuff.
so. But at the same time, we're still all living under the color of this baloney,
Well, yeah, but the district judges, to some extent, are doing that. But then the Superior Court steps in and says, no, we're going to enforce these things.
Yeah. Prosecute.
Yeah, it's because the district attorneys have declared war on the lawful Second Amendment community, and they're coming after us with everything they got.
They have, and you've talked about this like in meetings and on here as well. It's like lately they've been prosecuting stuff that we wouldn't have thought they would generally prosecute before. They're not messing around. They're going after people.
No, we've been told by some of the attorneys that we work with that they've been absolutely informed. They're coming after us. No more deals, no more ignoring stuff. They're coming after us. Well, and the average person out there doesn't see it because, again, we get you guys are exaggerating. You're just trying to scare us to raise money. Yeah, you want to talk to all of the attorneys out there and all of the people's lives that have been ruined because even if eventually you get out from underneath of it,
oh yeah,
your life is done.
You're still screwed. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's why, I love these heroes on the keyboards. Just don't comply. Yeah, well, when you're facing 20 years in prison and you've been sitting in jail for 90 days, wondering what the hell just happened, come talk to us then.
And your house is gone and your family's gone and, your livelihood is gone, over paperwork violations,
Right. I mean, you look at Scott Hayes, right?
Yeah.
A completely lawful self-defense shooting. His life's been destroyed. Yeah. And even though, this is kind of going outside of what we're talking about. They pulled a fast one on him because the court said he could have his license back starting September. But the chief said, no. When the judge ruled, you had 90 days to appeal and you didn't appeal. So I'm not giving you your license.
Oh, come on. Really?
No, that didn't count.
Oh,
that didn't count.
I don't think I knew about that.
That's so petty.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's so petty.
Yeah. So petty.
No, but Jim, it begs the question. We saw previous administrations on the federal level really go after dealers for minor clerical errors, zero tolerance. Yeah. Presumably, we can expect the same for firearms owners in Massachusetts.
Well, it's funny you say that, Jeff, because remember starting this conversation about having everything still on their roster, even though they sell it?
Yep.
What are they going to do with inspections?
Oh, yeah, right. Part of the dealer's inspections is they compare the books to their inventory.
Right. So the inspecting officer is going to get the list of their inventory and then come in and go, you're missing 500 guns. Oh, my God, get the SWAT team in here now. And they're going to have to explain, no, we didn't lose them. We sold them. But there's no evidence of that. And the only thing they could do, I suppose, is to reference, the ATF book.
Yeah.
Which they're not allowed to.
Yeah, right. That's a different thing. That's federal.
So it's going to be very interesting. Of course, retailers will also have to register, like us, frames and receivers and unfinished frames and receivers. Imagine going through a retailer's store and back room that's been in business for 50 years and pick out what could be an unfinished receiver or frame. I mean, oh my Lord! Yeah, some of those things are
bunch of crushed beer cans that could have eventually been, melt
that's right
into an unfinished frame.
Well, that would really twist them up because on one hand it's green and it's recycling.
There you go.
But it's also a firearm.
Yeah, that's funny. When Holly and I went on our big trip to Alaska, one of the islands we stopped on on the cruise. Me, I'm just poking around. I'm like, hey, well, they built this huge pier thing for the boats to come in. And I got down on the rocky shore and I'm like, what's that rust line in? So I go up to the edge of the soil and it's kind of like a little 5-foot cliff where they built everything. They literally built the foundation out of unused salmon cans and just crushed them and used them to build the foundation for the rock wall. Nice. I'm like, okay, why not, right?
Oh, it's working.
Well, for now it is, But But yeah, it's just insane. I have no idea how they're going to make this work with any of us, but certainly not for the retailers. It's just going to be a mess.
So with this new kind of, well, not new, but with this ethos of, them cracking down on essentially lawful gun owners for minor petty paperwork violations, you have to take the worst possible interpretation of these laws, right? It's not a matter of being, Chicken Little or whatever, the sky is falling and all that stuff. You have to take the worst possible interpretation of these things because they've demonstrated that they're willing to go after, you and me for paperwork violations, for license things. What's next? They're going to crack down on storage violations. They're going to crack down on, registration violations. They're going to crack down on what? Yeah. Every little conceivable paperwork violation is going to result in your rights being taken away under threat of being prosecuted.
Well, I think it's fair to take that interpretation because that's clearly what the district attorneys are doing. They are taking the very worst of the interpretations.
Exactly.
As we've seen with Hayes, as we've seen with Kyle. So
they are bending over backward.
It's not saying the sky is falling when the brick hits you in the face. Now, Jim, I do have a question. So with this new registration scheme...
Hold on, Garrett. Jeff has a question. Hold on, Garrett. He has a question. Okay, have at it.
So now that this registration
use it wisely
is going into place, and it seems like it's going to happen, at least it's going to be in place for a while, pending some legal action,
lawsuits, etc.
Recently, so now that Massachusetts has transitioned over to the whole MyMassGov thing for mass fish hunt and reporting, and everything government related is going through that one portal.
Yeah.
The last time I logged in, it sent me an interesting message that you are forced to agree with, by the way, if you want to use the state services, that the state owns your data and they are free to share it with whoever they please. And it makes no distinction of, well, it's your data, but with private information, it says, nope, everything you tell us about yourself is ours to own, and we can share it with any third party we choose. So is there anything as far as protections in place for people who register firearms to say that, their list can be sold to Brady or Everytown or to the neighborhood or to an HOA, a building owner?
Here's what they did, 2 years ago?
Oh,
there is a law in place. I think it's chapter 66, 10A or 10B or something.
Yeah.
You cannot divulge the name and address, personal information of the gun owner, but you can divulge everything else about their transactions, what they bought, when they bought, not who they bought it from, but remember they tried to code it by giving every gun owner a code, and it didn't take long for people to figure that out. If you can do a Rubik's Cube, you can figure that garbage out. And it's crazy. The other thing we should mention too, Jeff, is while you're on that, a lot of people have contacted us and said, what the hell's going on? This stuff was outlawed by the United States Supreme Court. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
About that.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. The United States Supreme Court ruled that the feds can't do it because of the federal law. The states have not been challenged. And one of the hard things to challenge that would be because there's never been a challenge. I shouldn't say never been a challenge, but in Massachusetts for sure.
Yeah.
And trying to take on something brand new like this, we warned everybody what it would take if this thing passed and what it would take if Gold started to get into litigation. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars already.
Oh, to get started.
It's amazing how fast
to get momentum going is several in the six figures.
Take a stack of $100 bills and light it on fire. Just every week.
And then throw some treasury bills on top of it to put it out. So it's unlikely that we would challenge the registration, at least at this point. However, the sharing of information that you just mentioned, Jeff, could be a whole different thing. And that might even be something else that somebody else takes on.
Yeah. Because
it's ridiculous that they can just start parsing your information out there for campaign donations or whatever.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So serialization is also going to be complex because the state is going to issue serial numbers. I'm not sure how the ATF is going to feel about that. The other thing is, as far as I understand the law, you can't actually put the serial numbers on yourself. You have to bring them to somebody who's licensed to do so. And I got to do...
Really?
It's one of those things that I have to research again. But as far as I know, you have to be a manufacturer.
Oh, that's right.
The original language said you had to go to either a manufacturer, or they were trying to add in language that said gunsmiths could do the serialization. But the caveat was, well, then you'd have to transfer it to them.
Yeah, they have to receive it.
And then they'd have to transfer it back to you. And anything that was covered by grandfathering dates or anything else, now you're stuck in this pickle where...
And what if it's not a rostered thing? Or
they can't transfer stuff back and forth.
Transfer it back. So just a second ago, Jim, you were talking about the state issuing serial numbers.
Correct.
Now, that's supposed to be something... Yeah, we've talked about that before, and I don't understand how that's supposed to work. I mean, you're supposed to, apply for a serial number to the state system, and they'll issue you one of some sort, and then you're supposed to take the gun to a gunsmith and have it applied, and,
Yeah, but you're supposed to apply for it before the gun exists. So... So once again, going back to unfinished stuff,
right?
That is considered a firearm. A million plus years ago, I was a machinist. I'm pretty sure I got blocks of something floating around the house that could be changed or made into something.
I got a block of aluminum laying around somewhere. Sure.
Yeah, we auctioned one off not too long ago. The first 0% lower. Yeah, 0% lower. Had a serial number, though. I'm pretty sure it wasn't issued by the state, but that's okay.
Well, in order to issue and serialize a firearm, I mean, federal law says you have to be an FFL, don't you? So would that mean the state of Massachusetts has to then become its own FFL and under its own laws then register all the firearms to itself?
Well...
That's an interpretation.
All right. Honey, get that 4 roses, please.
I think Jeff's on right now.
I've never done gummies, but after that question, I'm going to think about it. Yes. Primity.
A lot of long work weeks in a row. So
yeah. It's Jeff's had a lot of time to think.
No, but I mean,
he's hopped up on Sudafed. Yeah.
In order to start issuing serial numbers that are supposed to be going to the ATF, they have their own set of requirements. So, I mean,
well, the other thing too is if the ATF ever has to trace a gun, they're going to go, where'd this serial number come from? We didn't issue this serial number.
It was issued by the state, by some dude with an Excel spreadsheet up in Chelsea or wherever the hell it's going to be done.
Yeah. And, the other thing, too, is, and again, not giving them any ideas, I didn't see any limit in the law about how many guns you can build, which at some point the ATF may take interest in.
That's a question. That is a question. Yeah.
I mean, if you're building, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 guns in a year, who cares? But if you start whipping out,
4 a day.
Garrett's woodshed, is whipping out 20 guns a month that he's building. And they're trying to figure out
all for personal use.
That's right. All for personal use. It's like the deputy sheriff in the Clint Eastwood movie, Unforgiven. Says, Fred, you got 1 arm and 3 guns. Yeah, I ain't going to get killed for the lack of shooting back because I can't reload. So there's a lot of muzzles coming out of Garrett's woodshed. So there's so much to this that was never thought through. Or as Mike Harris says, these aren't bugs. These are features.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of this was intentional. Everybody says, "Oh, they'll fix that." No, they won't.
Yeah,
they're not going to fix anything unless it suits them, which they've done to prevent us from moving forward with lawsuits. They pulled another one for private police forces on campuses. They put that one in a budget or a spending bill and fix that for them. But do you think they'll they'll change anything for us, good luck, pal.
Yeah, no.
I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Of course not.
Yep. So other than that, not much is really going on, you know.
There are a pile of cases. We're going to have Mike Harris in the next, probably pretty soon, come in here and talk details and stuff. But there are, a dozen cases or so the goal is either spearheading or intimately involved with, or, everything from
Marquee.
the federal case to Marquee. Yeah, exactly. All the way to the licensing delays, all that good stuff.
That's another one. Between Marquee and the Kyle Collada case, we get some people, why are you bothering with non-residents? Well, first of all, it's the Second Amendment. They're people too. But if you look at the Marquee case, perhaps stupidly, when the Supreme Judicial Court of Mass took that case to justify the new law, they approved suitability as being constitutional because they changed it. So Donnell, which was suitability. Well, first of all, those two cases, Donnell and Marquee, they had nothing to do with suitability. They were non-residents in possession of a gun without a license.
Right.
How the hell did they bring suitability into that whole thing?
The SJC took the case so that they could, make this declaration on suitability, right?
Right. They actually changed the whole dynamics of the case so they could justify suitability. Now Marquee has, I should say, gone to the Supreme Court of the United States, but they've accepted the petition. They haven't taken the case, but they've accepted the petition. And as far as I know, that's the first suitability piece that they've even looked at. I don't know if they've looked at it from any other states or not. I'm not aware of it right now, but that's why we're supporting that particular case so, heavily, is because it's suitability. Yeah, and if the Supreme Court looks at that and actually takes the case and tells Massachusetts, no, this is not okay. Just because you say, the apple is now a banana does not make it a banana. It's still an apple. So it doesn't matter that you codified it. It doesn't matter that your high court abused their authority and took up two cases to prove that it's okay. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons we're doing this. By the way, we get at least a little good news on Kyle's thing today.
Yeah, tell us about that.
I guess they're going to have another bail hearing this Friday in district court.
In district court.
So district court, which is interesting because it's still up there at the SJC. The only thing we can think of, the reason the SJC hasn't done anything, because usually it's 2 or 3 days and they'll tell the attorney, we'll take a hearing, or no, we won't. Yeah. It's been almost 4 weeks. They haven't, not a peep. But in the bail request for Kyle to the SJC, Dan Hagan also asked them to look at that one piece in the dangerousness statute as being basically, cruel and unusual, that just because you possess a gun with no underlying factors, you're not a dangerous person.
Right.
Most of the country doesn't look at you that way. So they're taking their time very carefully, because they know if they give us the wrong decision, we're going right to federal court.
Yeah, so, and it's because it's not, and that's actually that's some good lawyering on Dan Hagan's part, by the way.
It's hard to logically justify when you have case after case after case of career violent criminals. Yeah, being at least off, whether you can say it's a lot of money or not, they're at least offered and afforded the ability to get out pending trial.
Right, and here's a guy with a paperwork violation, and he's just automatically dangerous and needs to cool in jail for, where are we, 87 days or something like that now?
Well, 87 days, I guess, as of today. The funny thing is, a couple of people have said, well, maybe it's because the courts in the court record said he has ties to Arizona. They're letting people out who have ties to ISIS and Hamas, for crying out loud.
Ties to Arizona, that criminal organization.
We had talked about it. They had a couple of guys that were trafficking. They were trafficking unserialized homemade firearms. So the whole ghost gun thing that the state loved to rant about. Yep. They had people who were trafficking those firearms and connected to entities outside of the country. And they were offered bail.
Yeah.
There was just a guy, I think he was from New York State, and it was one of these sting operations with the FBI. He came into Massachusetts thinking he was visiting a minor, one of those stings they do online.
Yep.
And it was very high bail, but they offered him bail.
Yeah. Yeah. That guy's not dangerous enough to keep in jail. But, some guy who failed to fill out the proper paperwork, he is, he needs to be kept in jail.
No, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. I know his fiance, Saranda, is using, Give, Send, Go website to try to raise money for his bail. She originally set that up and she contacted us and said, should this money come for goal? And I said, no, keep that. You're going to need it, because if we do get him bail at some point, it's not an appropriate use of goals funds to do it.
Yeah.
Hiring an attorney is definitely the right thing to do, but offering bail, no, we're not going to. Jeff Strider, bail bondsman. Here we go. The next reality show, right? While he's on the road, doing technology, he's searching bounties.
Doing technology.
He's
doing the technology thing.
That's right. That's right.
Jim, switch gears.
Yes, sir.
Before we wrap this up. Switch gears.
Oh, we're going to wrap this up at some point?
Nah, probably sometime
Why
tomorrow.
Bother?
Sometime tomorrow.
You said 5 or 10 minutes.
Let's talk about the wildlife management zones thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a piece of legislation that's filed. We have an alert on it. You'll find it on the Gold News page. And it is to create a brand new, what do they call it? Reserve Advisory Council, which
something like that.
Something like that. And the impetus of the bill is that Fish and Wildlife would have to designate at minimum 30% of all fish and wildlife lands as reserves. Now, if you look at it from the outside, it appears that it's a forestry move, not necessarily a wildlife move. However, the language says that nothing on those reserves can be destroyed or removed.
Right. No resources can be removed.
Right. So that tells us, if you've been in this business as long as I have, that's a huge red flag. But the other thing is Fish and Wildlife on almost all their lands does a ton of work for biodiversity.
Sure.
So in some places they let forests grow, other places they want some early successional forests for different species to thrive. The Woodcock Initiative brought back meadows and very early successional stuff. And basically these people are saying, no, these lands will be untouched by man, but you can go hiking in them.
Oh, naturally.
So, there's so many issues with this. And I'm not afraid to say this anymore. I'm kind of done. Fish and Wildlife has become so weak under the new administration ever since Wayne McCallum and Jack Buckley left that they're ripe for attack. When they were strong and Goal was a big partner and others were big partners, it was the third rail of politics in the State House. You do not touch Fish and Wildlife, their money or their property or anything else. And when you did, you got absolutely hammered by the sportsmen, the gun owners, the environmentalists, the conservationists. And Mitt Romney found that out on all three when he got the crap kicked out of him. And frankly, so did Deval Patrick when he tried to take lands for wind farms. So now it's pretty much a free-for-all.
Yeah.
It has gotten so bad that 3 of the 7 board members have resigned in the last couple of months.
Oh, wow.
Because they're just not going to deal with it anymore.
Yikes.
Their meetings got so controlled that, at the end of our meeting, hey, anything for good of the order, anything you're thinking about?
Yeah.
They couldn't talk about anything that wasn't pre-approved by the administration.
They weren't allowed to.
They weren't allowed to.
That's nuts. Oh, my God.
They'd be called out of order. And, of course, at the last meeting, several of the sporting community, the Massachusetts Conservation Alliance, namely, went to the meeting to address the board, Nope, sorry. You're not allowed to say anything at our meetings unless it's pre-approved. So the general public can't even get up at the end of the meeting and say, hey, what the hell's going on with XYZ?
Yeah.
You have board members leaving. There's a piece of legislation to take over our lands. Nope, sorry, meeting adjourned.
Unbelievable. So with this, so the obvious implications here is, first off, the language says no resources can be disturbed, removed, destroyed, whatever. The language is unforgivably broad, because the one side's going to say, like you said, one side's going to say it's trees and forestry. The other side's going to say, well, it's hunting, and it's not that much of a stretch to say, they're going to interpret, somebody's going to interpret resources as deer and turkeys and,
of course,
stuff like that. So the obvious implication there is the damage to the spirit of the Pittman-Robertson funding here. Hunters and sportsmen are paying for this land, and we're not allowed to use it for its stated purpose.
Right. That's the whole problem with it. And, we actually put out a nice piece about it. I did a quick video and put it out about why gun owners should care about this. It's because you're paying for it. and I will guarantee you dollars to donuts that most gun owners have no clue they're paying for wildlife management. Yeah. And I mean, they should be proud of it. I'm sure some of them are mad about it. But if gun owners hadn't done this back in, what was that, in the 1940s, under Pittman Robinson, we wouldn't have anywhere near the system we have now. But yeah, listen to the video. It's not very long. I think it's maybe, 5 or 6 minutes, and it kind of explains the whole process. It is just so important that we look at this as another round of attacks. They're coming after everything because they feel they have no fear anymore.
Yeah.
And if you look at it from their perspective, even if we take it to the highest court in the country and win, what happens to them?
Nothing.
Yeah. They don't care.
They suffer no consequence. It's nothing. Not like they're going to get voted out.
Yeah, and they get to fight it with your tax dollars. It doesn't even cost them money.
Yeah. Well, that's like the Attorney General's office. A little known fact about that place. When the Attorney General's office sues a company, it could be like CVS. They sued them because they didn't like how they were dispensing hardcore drugs, even though the prescriptions were correct. And in order to get out of a lawsuit, CVS just said, yeah, okay, we'll agree to a $100,000 fine and move on. That money does not go into the general fund of the state of Massachusetts. That money goes into a slush fund for the Attorney General's office, and they can spend it any way they want.
Oh, like giving it to anti-gun groups and
bingo.
Well, and like with this particular thing, it's saying that the council is, NGOs and nonprofits, but environmentalist activists who I'm guessing are not avid hunters.
Right. The group itself that they're talking about instituting this is the so-called Reserve Scientific Advisory Council. Right. I'm guessing there's not going to be many goal members on that council.
My guess is the only people on there with PhDs will have PhDs in literature.
Yeah. I'm a doctor of tree bark. Yeah. So, Yikes. They have no fear. And, with everything that we continue to talk about, it's still amazing that there are gun owners and sportsmen out there that have no idea what's going on. And we're trying our best to get information out to everybody. But if you're not involved in any of the ways that we can put news out, you're on your own.
Yeah, we can't. Right. There's only we can't knock on everybody's door. You have to get involved in the social media as much as it sucks, and you have to, read your emails, and you have to stay informed.
Which I don't buy. I mean, reading one email once a week is not a heavy lift.
No, it's not.
How long have you heard the sportsman saying, they're not coming after my thing. I just have my deer rifle. It's a bolt action. They're not coming after me.
Yeah.
And they didn't care when it was the AR. They didn't care when it was the pistol. Yep. They didn't care when it was everything else because it wasn't what they had.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to tell them, it's like, you're right. They're not coming after your deer rifle. They're going to call it a sniper rifle first, and then they're going to come after it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just imagine, this hunting season when some poor schlep from Idaho comes here to duck hunt like he's had for 30 years.
Yep.
And he's got a 3-shot semi-automatic shotgun. And the next thing you know, he's in handcuffs.
Yeah.
And he's going to go, are you serious?
Yeah.
A 3-shot semi-automatic duck gun?
Yeah.
And I'm in handcuffs and I'm a felon? What the hell's going on here? And, it's going to take, unfortunately, some of those cases, one of these days we're going to find a way to get a hold of DOJ on this stuff. And a lot of people have said, well, you're not doing your job. You haven't got a hold of them. Do you know how many people across this country are trying to get a hold of them right now?
Yeah.
I mean, there are some very high-level people and organizations across the country that are beating down their doors trying to get things done, and we're just a little whisper in the corner over here. So doesn't mean we're not going to keep trying. Yeah. Matter of fact, I met a woman at the latest NRA meetings down in Virginia, and her dad was instrumental in starting the foundation, the NRA Foundation, donated millions and millions of dollars to the foundation. And when I told her about Kyle's predicament, she just looked at me and said, he's a political prisoner. You can't put it any other way. He's a political prisoner.
That's kind of how it shakes out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
all right, guys. Well, we got a lot more to go.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to depress anybody, but I had to remind Mike Harris today that after Chapter 180, 25 years later, we were still debating things in the office. That's going to, the three of us are probably going to be dead before this thing gets to where it needs to be. But hopefully the Supreme Court will see the light and at least send us some saving grace at some point.
We're in a generational fight. Yikes. All right. Jim Wallace, Executive Director, Gun Owners Action League. Thank you, as always, for everything you do, paying attention, staying on top of stuff. Appreciate you, as always.
Yep. Retirement papers have been published and they're been submitted.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Nope. Sorry.
Nope.
All right, Jim.
Cool.
Take it easy. We will talk to you again soon. So before we roll out tonight, it's we can't really. I don't think that we in good conscience can avoid talking about what happened 2 Wednesdays ago. It's 2 weeks ago tomorrow as we record this. Conservative activist and polemicist, debater, guy goes around to the college campuses, all of those things. Charlie Kirk was assassinated on a college campus in Utah. It's all over the news. People on all sides are addressing it, per their priors and per their issue areas, it seems. To me, obviously, this is a Second Amendment podcast. This is, Massachusetts specific, but Second Amendment in general. But as somebody who believes deeply in the Constitution, it's a larger constitutional issue, especially with concerns over the First Amendment, free speech, right? I will say that for myself, I condemn in no uncertain terms, in the strongest possible terms, any form of political violence, and especially the type that we saw here. It is wrong to silence somebody because you disagree with what they say. That is fundamentally anti-liberty to me. So that's my position. I don't care who you are. I don't care what side you're on. I don't care what your issues are. Political violence is wrong in every form.
Yeah, timing always plays a part of everything. So, we typically record, handful of days before, the release date.
Yeah. And this event happened the day after we recorded.
Yeah, we recorded on a Tuesday. Everything happened on a Wednesday. So we even discussed all right, do we try to cut something in? Do we have a little side something? But we just said, all right, let's stick with what we had.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out what to do about it later. One of the things that stands out to me is how many people feel the need to say, well, I didn't agree with him on everything.
Yeah.
And I certainly understand the context for a follow-up statement to say, but that's no excuse for violence or whatever. But
yeah, that would be a rational take.
There are certainly a lot of people that I see say that, and I don't think that is a a contextual statement, I get the impression that that is a statement that's being made out of fear. That people are saying that, particularly non-conservative folks, because they don't want to be associated with that individual, because they fear the vitriol. They fear the mob coming after them, that if you were to say this was wrong and just leave your statement at that, that somehow you are, you are the concern, whoever.
You can't simply say, don't do that because it's wrong. You also have to qualify.
You have to caveat and qualify.
Yeah,
it's
you have to qualify. Well, he's a bad guy.
Listen, I'm not supporting him. I'm not defending him. I'm not just so you know. Yeah. I'm not. Right. But I think it's wrong to murder people, and it's like you really shouldn't have to qualify that statement. But
no, that statement should stand alone.
So
don't condone political violence.
So I'll say, like, in the spirit of courage, here's what I agree with Charlie Kirk on: free speech is the cornerstone of a civil society. I agree with him that ideas are tested and improved by rigorous debate and opposition. And I agree with him when he said that he has challenging conversations, because that's what's so important, because when people stop talking, that's when violence happens. So I respect that he went into rooms where people disagreed with him. I respected that he spoke his mind without fists or fear. And I respected that he gave his microphone deliberately to critics, so everyone could hear the opposing point of view, and that people could then decide for themselves. So for that, I offer no caveats, no apologies, no qualifying statements. So, I mean, the Goal podcast has, stood on a platform of being nonpartisan. The civil rights don't belong to any one particular party, but that also doesn't mean we have to pretend like we don't see that everybody's on an equal footing when it's just not true. So, for the folks that have shouted down opposing voices, marched in intimidation, rioted, turned courts into political weapons, and now openly embrace violence, that's why the Second Amendment exists. And it's to see people celebrating violence against others for, put the bunny quotes around it, wrongthink. Mm-hmm. It's no longer some abstract concept of tyranny. It's real. It's a genuine, articulable fear, I think, of death or great bodily harm for the content of your thoughts. So, in my opinion, and this is strictly my opinion, that's the right to keep and bear arms was meant for that circumstance. When tyranny doesn't, whisper from the corners, but raises its hand proudly and declares itself present and says that, no, people bring this upon themselves, and that people should be murdered for having an opinion and speaking about it publicly.
Yeah. So it is not right. So from my perspective, my sympathies go to Charlie Kirk's family, his wife, his kids, everybody who is associated with him. Again, I wholeheartedly and completely condemn political violence in all its forms. The basis of the country, the basis of liberty, the basis of the freedoms that we all, claim to want to live under, means that everybody gets a voice, whether you like them or not, whether you agree with what they say or not. So that's going to do it for today. Be sure to subscribe to the Goal Podcast. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Goal Podcast MA, on YouTube at the Goal Podcast, or on Twitter at Goal Update.
To join Goal, visit goal.org and click the Join Renew button on the top of the homepage.
If you have a topic you think we should cover, if there's something going on in your club or your town, or if you have a question for the mailbag, shoot us an email at goalpodcast@goal.org.
The Goal Podcast is a production of Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of Goal, its staff, or affiliates.